Okay guys, today's lesson is on percents and proportions. So we've done percents and fractions, now we're going to do percents and proportions. We know a little bit about proportions and how to solve them. Well, what we're going to be looking at are different types of questions that have percents in them. We're going to use proportions to help solve them. So I'm going to flip really quick to the next slide. These are what our questions are going to look like. All right, they're going to be sentences, like example 1, what percent of 7 is 4? All right. 2, what number is 24% of 200? So we're trying to solve these questions that have percents in them. Okay, now I'm going to go back to our front page, percents and proportion. What we're going to use to solve these today, all right, and there's a couple different methods to do this, but the one that I like to use is what we call is over of equals percent over 100. And then we're going to go ahead and write that down. Is over of equals percent over 100. And you can see that I'm setting this up in the form of our proportion. All right, this is what we call the percent proportion. Matter of fact, we can write that down. The percent proportion. The percent proportion. And what we're going to be doing is looking at these sentences and then trying to set up one of these proportions. All right, obviously there's 4 spots here. The is, the of, the percent, the 100. We're going to know 3 of these 4 spots, and one of them is going to be missing. And how do we solve proportions? Well, we're going to cross multiply and divide. Now, before we get to the next page and actually start doing the questions, I'm going to try to preach to you a little bit of an order of how I want you to do this. When we're setting up our proportion, okay, obviously the 100 is always going to go right here. All right, so the very first thing is you can put that 100 on the bottom right. The next thing I want you to look for, okay, is the percent. That's always going to be next because it's very easy to spot. It's the number that has the percent sign. Number with the percent sign. Okay, that's pretty easy. And then the is and the of are what gets a little tricky. All right, so again, the order here is you always put down your 100, then you're going to find the percent sign. The next thing that I want you to look for is the of. It's going to go on the bottom left, because here's how you tell what the of is. Okay, the of is always the number directly after the word of. Directly after the word of. Okay, now that's how you're going to identify what number goes on that bottom. You're going to see a word of, and directly after it there's going to be another number that's going to go on the bottom. Okay, then if you do those 3 steps, then by process of elimination you're going to know what the is. So we want to do the is last because this one's a little confusing. Okay, it's going to be the number that is by the word is. It's by the word is. I can't say it's in front of the word is. I can't say it's behind the word is. It's, it's close to it. All right, but we can't guarantee every time that it's going to be in the same spot. So that's why we do that one last, because the is probably the trickiest one to come up with. Okay, let's go ahead and do some prompts here. So here's 3 examples. I'm going to do the first one for us, then I'll let you guys do the next 2. But I'm going to write over on the right here, my is over of equals percent over 100. I'm going to use that on every single problem. So for example 1, the first thing I'm going to start with is let's set up a proportion. All right, I know the 100 is going to go on the bottom right. Okay, and if you notice in example 1, you see certain things. You see the word percent, I see the word of, I see the word is. Okay, so those things are going to help me. All right, the first thing I said that we should look for is the percent. So I'm looking in example 1. I don't see anything that has a percent sign. I see the word percent. Matter of fact, it says what percent. I'm trying to find the percent. So in this problem, that's the one that I don't know is the percent. So the number on top of 100 is going to be my x. Okay, the next step I said is look for the word of. Here's the word of. What's the number that's directly after it? Well, that's the 7. Okay, the 7 is our of because it comes right after the word of. And the is I said always to do last, because when you look at the is, if you look closely, the is has 2 numbers around it. All right, and that's why it's kind of tricky. We don't know which one it's going to be. All right, so what we do is just process of elimination. I've already used the 7, so in this case, okay, the is came after it. It's not always going to do that. Sometimes it's in front. In this case, it's after it. The 4 is the only number left. The 4 has to be my is. Okay, once you get your problem set up here, then you can go ahead, cross multiply, divide. 4 times 100 is 400. Divided by 7 gets you It actually gets you a really long decimal. It gets you 57.14, and it keeps going. I'm going to go ahead and round this to the nearest hundredth here, so 57.14. And just think about this for a second. Which spot are we looking for? It said what percent, and we're looking for the number that is in the percent spot. So this 57.14 is going to be a percent because it's the number that's over 100. So I got to remember to put the percent sign on that one. Okay, if you're looking for the percent, it better have a percent sign on it. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and try example 2 and example 3 on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and then come back and listen to the answer. Okay, we're back. Hopefully what you tried was, for example 2, we set up a proportion. I know that 100 will always go on the bottom right. Then I'm going to look and see if there's a number with a percent sign. There is, 24%. So the 24, because it's a percent, goes over 100, because that's what percent means, that number over 100. Okay, then I look for my of. Here's an of. What's the number that's directly after it? Well, that's 200. Okay, that means that the is going to be what I'm looking for in this case. All right, so I cross multiply 200 times 24 divided by 100, and we get a final answer that x has to be 48. Now in this case, 48 is not a percent. We weren't looking for the percent. We were looking for what the is. So 48 is the number that is 24% of 200. Okay. All right, let's do example 3 here. You should have already done it. I put 100 on the bottom right. I do see my percent sign. That's 84, so the 84 goes over 100. I look for the word of. Well, here's the word of, but look, is there a number that's after it? No, there isn't. And in fact, this case, it says of what number? That means I don't have the number that's after the word of, which means the of in this case is what I'm looking for. Okay, by process of elimination, I have one number left. That's the 105. And you can see in this case, the 105 happens to be in front of the word is. That's why we say the is, always save it for last, because sometimes the number's in front, sometimes the number's after. In this case, it's in front. So we get 105 over x equals 84 over 100. We are going to cross multiply 105 times 100, divide by 84, and that's going to give me a final answer here of 125. Okay, 125. So 105 is 84% of 125. Now really, guys, these 3 questions are the only 3 types of questions that they can ask you. If I look back up at my proportion here, is over of equals percent over 100. Well, I know the 100 is always going to be in there. So they can only ask 3 questions. Either you're looking for the percent, you're looking for the of, or you're looking for the is. So 3 examples, that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Okay, final problem for us today, story problem, says in a heptathlon, an athlete earns points in 7 track and field events. Suppose an athlete scores 836 points in the 100-meter hurdles. This score makes up 16% of the total score. What is the total score? So we're looking for what the total is. Okay. Now, what we learned already was is over of equals percent over 100. Now, I can use it for this problem. The problem is when you read that, you don't always see the word is, and then you don't always see the word of. I see an of right here, 16% of the total score, but it's not that same type of question where it's set up as neatly as our first 3 examples. All right? So we could probably reason through it using the is over of, but I'm going to show you another way to do this. A lot of teachers show it this way, and I like to switch. So I use the is over of proportion method on those sentence questions, but as soon as I get to story problems, I kind of switch gears here, and I like to do what we call part over whole equals percent over 100. So the percent over 100 isn't going to change, but instead of saying is over of, I'm thinking of part and whole, because there's always a number in the problem that's the partial amount, and then the whole is always going to be the total. Okay, the whole or the total. So when I'm looking at this problem, I see a couple numbers. It says 7 track and field events, so there's 7 events. It says that the athlete scored 836 points, okay, in the 100-meter hurdles. So you got to determine, okay, I know my 100 here goes here. I have to determine, is that 836 points, is that just a partial amount of the entire score, or is that their final score for all 70 events? Well, it's just a partial amount, because it says, suppose the athlete scores 836 points in the 100-meter hurdles. That's just one event. That's the points from one event. That is a partial amount. And actually, our question here says, what is the total score? We're looking for the total, and the total always goes on bottom. So if you think of it as, what's the partial amount and what's the total amount, then we can set up a proportion. Of course, percent goes over 100. Our percent is 16. Okay, we set it up as a proportion, and we can solve this now. So we go ahead and we cross multiply 836 times 100, divide by 16, and we get a final answer that this person scored 5,225 points in this heptathlon. Okay, so we got two things we learned today. Is over of equals percent over 100. And then for story problems, we do part over whole equals percent over 100. Just two good methods to set up proportions. And then, of course, we cross multiply and divide to solve those proportions. That's our lesson for today.